This week on The Whitney Reynolds Show, we are talking about life-threatening food allergies. What all parents need to know coming up. The Whitney Reynolds Show is supported by the Out of Darkness Chicagoland Community Walk, walking to prevent suicide through research, advocacy, prevention, and education. When you think of food allergies, milk or nuts might come to mind, but with today's guest, a very real and even deadly topic is being discussed. 15 million Americans suffer from food allergies, and today we are working through the important details you need to know. You're watching The Whitney Reynolds Show. Our first guest is a mom of 4 children, and we all know kids can be a handful. However, add 3 children with food allergies to it, and this mother has a very full plate. Dr. Sarah Boudreau-Romano, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
So 4 kids, 3 with food allergies.
Yes.
That's a lot to deal with.
It is a lot to deal with. It is a lot.
How did you find out that your first child had food allergies?
So my first child was born without food allergy, so I really didn't expect our other children to have food allergy. The twins were born, and one of them was born with a lot of eczema, which is this itchy skin rash that kids and adults can sometimes get. And this can be sort of a marker of allergic status, of your body. So he had very bad eczema when he was little, and so we had him tested for milk allergy because that was the main thing he was eating at that time. And the skin test came back positive and the blood test came back positive. So then we took him off of the milk, and we're just hopeful that that was his only allergy. I made the twins a cookie when they were 9 months old, and I said, please wait till I get back from clinic and feed the kids the cookie because I wanted to be there the first time they ate cookies. So I got back from my clinic at Northwestern. It was a long day. We got back home, and I gave them each the bite of a cookie that was maybe the size of a fingernail. It was very small. They were just getting their teeth in. And within 3 or 4 minutes of eating the cookie, one of my sons got a swollen eye and big puffy lips. And I was giving him medication. And in the meantime, my dad starts yelling to me that my other son's laying on the floor. I go to pick him up, and he's completely limp. He's blue around the lips, and I'm obviously panicking at this point.
Right.
And it's funny when you're a physician, even though I'm an allergist, I sort of lost that sort of background because I've been at that point. I was completely a mom. So I luckily had an EpiPen in the house, and I gave him his epinephrine, and within a couple minutes, he was definitely feeling better, but it was touch and go for a while. He wouldn't lift his head up.
If you didn't have an EpiPen in the house, what could have happened?
I hate to imagine what could happen. He was very sick. Luckily, we called 911 right away, and they came pretty quickly, within 5 minutes. But sometimes it can take just a very short amount of time to have full anaphylaxis. And
I want to go back to what you said. You gave him a bite of a cookie the size of a fingernail?
It was the size of a fingernail. I mean,
Wow.
it was a tiny bite. He didn't really have many teeth.
So that's there's a couple of misconceptions that I think people are thinking, either food allergies are developed and they might not hit you. They could hit you really hard the first time.
Absolutely.
So there was nothing earlier on in their life that ever alarmed you that they had this food allergy?
Well, I knew he was allergic to milk at that time. And so this cookie, I made without milk, I made without wheat, but I made with egg. And so it ended up after the testing that they both had allergy to egg as well.
That is so interesting. So then as a mom with your 2 sons that are, one has puffy eyes, one is blue around the lips, you get them checked out, the test,
That's the tough part. As a mom and as an allergist, it's a really tough part because when I go in, I want to know everything he's allergic to so we don't have that experience again. But typically that's not how we test for food allergies. If you do large panels of food, you often end up avoiding food that you shouldn't be, or food that you were safely eating before, and then you start to avoid based on a test. So there is sort of a science when you go about having kids tested and telling them what to avoid. In our case, we knew that he was already avoiding milk and wheat, and really the only other ingredients was brown sugar and rice drink. And so egg would have been one of the more common food allergens that was present in the cookie. So we tested specifically for that. You can do it by a skin test, which you basically prick the skin with a little bit of that protein, of the egg protein, and you see if you get a response. So their responses were both very big. They got a large hive, and that's indicative of food allergy. It's not 100% though. So then you take the history plus the skin test plus a blood test, and you kind of put that picture together.
Have you formed a group with other moms in the area that their kids have food allergies? Because I would think, being a mom, this could feel very lonely because all of a sudden you have to start worrying about birthday parties and cafeterias and even plane rides. Oh, sure. And what is that like?
It's a huge worry. It's a worry every day. So I actually wasn't able to go back to work. I decided to take some time off. I did not know how to cook at all. I mean, it's like boxed macaroni and cheese was my forte, and I was very good at it, and that's really all I knew how to do. So when the food allergies started stacking up, I realized that I was going to have to learn how to cook and actually use my kitchen as a way to nourish my children, which was never the plan. The plan was really cooking out, or cooking quickly and eating out. So what I ended up doing, because I stopped working, is I felt a big disconnect from my career and from my patients. And so I started a blog called The Allergist Mom, and I was able to share anecdotes and stories and education through the blog. And so that really became my community with other people, supporting them and in turn them supporting me, which was just a really nice way to combine both of my hats, so to speak.
That's what you find out is sometimes whenever you first go through something, with a lot of our guests that have come on the show, they felt so alone at first. But the second you start telling your story and speaking out and talking to other people, it's amazing who else has gone through it, who else is facing the same challenges. And I think this food allergy thing is something that is growing. And if you talk to most people, either someone in their family, they're allergic to something. Where can people find out more about you?
So you can reach me either at theallergistmom.com or at Lurie Children's Hospital, the Division of Allergy Immunology.
Okay, well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It's now time for our viewer's voice, where we take it to the streets and have the viewers weigh in. Today's question is, do you feel there are enough laws in place to accommodate food allergies?
We have a son that is allergic to peanuts, and so we've always had the challenge of him being the one at 2, 3, 4 of asking teachers, does anybody have peanut butter? Has somebody touched the handle of the water fountain? It's a dangerous situation, and you have to carry EpiPen.
I think that people should be responsible for themselves. So if they know that they have a food allergy, I don't think that there should be laws or rules to have like a restaurant owner, if that's what you're talking about.
Absolutely not. There's a constant reminder on, please make sure my food's prepared separately. And then there's still a worry beyond that because you don't really know what precautions are taken into effect back in the kitchen. So, when it comes to eating, you can't really enjoy your meal because you're waiting for that itch or that tingle in your throat.
Absolutely, because there's a lot of things I don't buy because I don't understand. And there's a lot of things, I don't know what this is, so I'm not buying it.
Our next guest is well known in the world of food allergies. Dr. Ruchi Gupta is an associate professor of pediatrics at Northwestern University and Lurie Children's Hospital. She is here to explain what food allergies are and how to recognize it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So first of all, explain what is a food allergy. I'm sure all these people at home have heard this parent's child has it, or maybe their husband does. What is a food allergy?
So food allergy is a reaction, it's an immune-mediated reaction that happens when somebody eats a food they're allergic to. And it can lead to something called anaphylaxis, which is a severe, life-threatening allergic reaction. It happens rapidly, and it's often caused by foods, is the number one, and then things like medicines, latex, bee stings. So it's a very, very important thing to be aware of. Now, the top foods kids are allergic to include peanuts, tree nuts, shellfish, finfish, milk, eggs, soy, and wheat. So a lot of common foods that are in everything we eat.
If kids are allergic to one of those, are they more than likely allergic to more than one?
Yes, absolutely. Great question. Yes, they are. And a study we actually conducted showed that about 30% of kids have more than one food allergy. And about 40% of those kids have already experienced anaphylaxis, or a severe life-threatening reaction.
Are there any warning signs that parents can keep an eye out for? Is there like a precursor to you might have a food allergy?
Yeah, so if a child eats a food, you need to be very aware of reactions that may occur. Now, food allergies or anaphylaxis can affect any organ system. So some common ones include the skin. So you'll often hear about hives. Kids will break out in hives. They could have swelling of their eye, around their mouth, rashes. Then it can affect the respiratory system. You hear this commonly. They have trouble breathing. If the child also has asthma, you can have things like wheezing, throat closing or tightening, cardiovascular, drop in blood pressure, dizziness, GI, vomiting, profuse vomiting, diarrhea. And then a lot of times kids will just tell you they feel funny, or it's almost like this feeling of doom, impending doom.
So going back to the two, so food allergy and then this really medical term,
Anaphylaxis.
Yeah. That's the one that can be deadly if not treated right.
So
when kids first get diagnosed with a food allergy, sometimes is it mild?
It can be.
Okay.
So the problem, though, is if a child has a food allergy and they have a mild, say they just have hives or a little swelling, there is no way of knowing that the next time they ingest that food, it's not going to be severe life-threatening. So all kids, even if they have mild reactions, have to be prepared. And community, schools, we all have to be prepared, because right now there's no treatment, there's no cure for food allergies. So the only thing we have is to be prepared to react if something were to happen. And the main way to do that is to know how and when to use epinephrine.
Okay, so epinephrine, that's something that you inject into the skin in case there is a reaction. Yes. Now, the way I've seen it on some TV shows, which could, I don't know if this is right, they inject it in the neck, the leg. Like, where do you inject? Like, what is going on with this injection?
So you're right. And movies and TV shows have, made humor of it or light of it, but it is very serious, and it is very, very important to know exactly how to use it, because you should not be injecting it into your neck. So it's a simple device, and really it's so easy to use. You take the cap off, you inject it into your lateral thigh or the outside thigh. You can do it over clothing, so it's not, you don't have to disrobe the child. And you hold it in for 10 seconds, and then you remove it. And the two things I think that are so important for people to know when they're scared of it is you'll never see the needle. It goes in, it comes out, no needle, and you can put it in over clothing. So, it is something that they should be prepared to use quickly if they see a child having a reaction.
Is this something that schools must have?
Absolutely. So it is so critical that schools are prepared, because like I said, 1 in 13 kids right now have a food allergy. That's about 2 in every classroom. And studies have shown that 25% of kids have their first time reaction in schools. So a lot of kids are experiencing these reactions and potentially anaphylaxis in schools. Schools need to educate their teachers, their staff, their nurses on how to recognize anaphylaxis and then what to do if it happens. There's a great program right now, EpiPen for Schools, that is giving epinephrine injection auto-injectors free to schools. So you just have to go online, epipenforschools.com, and apply for it, and you can get these stock auto-injectors. So in case a child were to have anaphylaxis first time, or they forgot their EpiPen, you could have it ready to use and potentially, help decrease their reaction. Now the program, I've actually partnered with Mylan to develop a video for school staff or teachers to educate them on just that, how to recognize anaphylaxis and then how to treat it.
So that leads me to my next question. If you're talking to the older crowd, they'll say, oh, food allergies weren't around when I was a kid. There's something in the food these days. Why are we hearing more about it now?
Yeah, and I tell you, that is the $1 million Nobel Prize winning question, because I hear this all the time, and it's true. You know, when we were young, you didn't see it, 2 in every classroom. You didn't see that many children with it. And so what's happened, and this is something we're doing research in right now at Northwestern, and researchers around the country are trying to really figure out what's changed in the last 50 years. And some of the common theories that people are talking about include things like hygiene. There's this whole hygiene hypothesis saying that we as a society may have become too clean, all the antibacterial soaps, et cetera, that our immune systems are not exposed the same way they used to be. And so they're now attacking things that they shouldn't. Other things people are talking about, like you said, in the foods we eat, and has changed dramatically, and maybe our guts, the microbiome, the bacteria in our guts have changed so much. And so people are really looking into that as a potential factor. People talk about vitamin D. There's a lot of theories out there, but it's really hard to tease out, what really is causing this increase.
So what happens if there's not an EpiPen in the house?
Right, so what if it's a family's first time reaction? This kid's reacting to a food, what do? It's so important to call 911 or get medical attention. And even, if you use an epinephrine autoinjector, it's critical that you call 911 immediately, because you can potentially have another reaction occur a bit later. So even if you use an epinephrine autoinjector, you need to call 911 and get medical attention. And as you mentioned, schools, we conducted a study last year in Chicago public schools, because Chicago public schools, all of them have EpiPens right now, stock EpiPens. So yeah, go Chicago. We were definitely one of the first largest school districts to have all of that. But one of our studies, when we followed what happened in year 1, we found that 38 of them were used in 1 year. So just to show you, this is happening in schools, and they really do need to be ready and prepared.
It doesn't really matter how it developed, where it came from, it's happening. Yeah. So we must take caution.
Right.
Okay, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now it is time for our social sizzle. We are proud to present a preview from a young man who has created a very impressive documentary. Jack has accomplished more in his 13 years than most of us have done in a lifetime. His documentary illustrates firsthand the seriousness to understanding food allergies. Let's take a look.
So they were all having fun while I was just kind of sitting at the corner of the table.
My dad always said, you'd rather be safe than sorry.
There was more than one birthday party that I didn't get invited to, and the whole class did, just because their parents didn't want to deal with my allergies.
To inject, place black end against outer thigh, then press firmly and hold in place for 5 seconds.
I very clearly remember standing in the hospital holding my baby, crying.
It's that serious and I can die from it.
You just feel like something's wrong, and you get this deep-seated gut feeling that's I could die from this. I'm actually in danger.
Food allergies, the reason they're so dangerous is because even a tiny amount of food can trigger a very severe reaction.
Yeah, it is life-threatening. It is a challenge, but it can definitely be overcome with just a little bit of being careful.
Welcome to the show, Jack.
Thank you for having me.
So in your intro piece, I said in your 13 years, you've done more things than most of us do in our whole lifetime. You created a documentary based on your food allergy experience.
Yeah, so the documentary was kind of born out of
I was diagnosed with a food allergy at age 10, which is a lot later than most kids who learn about their food allergies. And I think the transition from not having to live with a food allergy to all of a sudden having to watch everything I ate, really, I learned so much, like that there's a lot of ignorance out there about food allergies and how frustrating it is. And so I decided that I wanted to make life easier for me and kids everywhere. And so that's when I decided to start making the documentary, and that was about a year and a half ago. And so I launched a Kickstarter campaign, which is a crowdfunding site, so I could get some money to get film equipment, because I've never really made a real movie before. And that really exploded. Within 3 days, I had almost $8,000, and then with our end result was about $10,000, which I used to spend on cameras, tripod, light, and other equipment to make the movie. And then pretty much this last whole year I've been working on the film, but now it's done.
So you have this food allergy. It kind of upsets you in a way that you want to make a difference. So how did you find out that you had a food allergy?
So when I was about 10 years old and I came home from school, my mom wanted me to kind of expand my my palate. And so she put a bowl of cashews on the table. And when I ate the cashew, it took only seconds before I was having trouble breathing. Everything got itchy. My tongue got these little bumps, and my chest kind of tightened. And so fortunately, I was okay. But then about a few weeks later, we went to the allergist office, and then they confirmed that I had a tree nut allergy. And tree nuts are all nuts, excluding peanuts. And then later that was narrowed down to just cashews and pistachios.
So in the process of making the documentary, what did you learn? What was one of the most fascinating things that you learned?
Well, I think the most interesting thing I realized throughout making the movie was that all the kids I interviewed, they kind of went through the same things that I had gone through and the same things that the other interviewees had gone through, even though I interviewed kids from ages 6 to 18 from all different parts of the world, but they all shared very similar experiences. So I thought it was really interesting that just kids all over the world with food allergies go through the same type of things.
And with your initial reaction to the cashew, was that one of your scariest days?
Yeah, it was probably the scariest day of my life. I really didn't know what was going on. It was so crazy. I thought I was having a heart attack. I really had no idea what was going on. And when you're having an allergic reaction, there were so many thoughts racing through my head. And when it was over, I was just worried that I had some sort of strange condition or disease. And I was convinced that I did have a food allergy. I don't know if everyone believed me at the time, but just because, I was 10 years old, you would expect to find out about something like that way before that age. So it was really scary.
Did that scared you so much, that kind of fuel making this documentary as well?
Yeah, I thought to myself, if I'm luckily haven't had a major allergic reaction after that, there are kids who have that every other month, and much scarier and even more life-threatening. And so it definitely fueled me and pushed me to make this movie.
So your film is already impacting a ton of people. What's your end-all goal with it? Do you want it to go into schools?
My goal is I do want the film to be in multiple schools. I think it's important that kids learn about food allergies. It's a widespread disease. I'm also thinking that I might want it in allergist office. So for people like me who just discovered their food allergy, to watch the movie that I made, so then I would have had a much better understanding of what I was about to go through. And so that they can educate people about food allergies so that they know how to handle them throughout the next.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your courageous story.
Thank you for having me.
Well, as we learned, food allergies are a real issue that, if not handled correctly, can even be fatal. I wanted people to understand and be aware of these life-threatening allergies for all the mothers, children, and parents out there who have had to make major adjustments to stay safe. Make sure to listen to your body, keep an eye out for warning signs, and if you feel like something's wrong, go see a doctor. For more information on today's show, visit WhitneyReynolds.com. The Whitney Reynolds Show is supported by the Out of Darkness Chicagoland Community Walk, walking to prevent suicide through research, advocacy, prevention, and education.